在心上。巴拉巴拉巴拉巴拉巴拉巴拉，哈巴拉巴拉巴拉巴拉，嘣嘣巴拉巴拉巴拉巴拉巴拉，嘣巴巴巴拉巴。让我们像一家人一样，来分享感动，化解迷惘，用最温柔的目光看彼此成长。张开背包，打开门窗，让爱照在心上。多少汗水砌成一道墙，多少苦心聚成一个家。这里是温暖明亮，阳光眷恋的地方。一个人一点微薄力量，一条心圆了遥远梦想。多经历就能点亮多难的愿望。 多少汗水砌成一道墙，多少苦心聚成一个家。这里是温暖明亮、阳光眷恋的地方。一个人一点微薄力量，一条心圆了遥远梦想。多经历就能点亮多难的愿望，让我们像一家人一样来分享感动，化解迷惘，用最温柔的目光看彼此成长。张开臂膀，打开门窗，让爱照在心上。也许你我故事不一样，却都在这被爱被疗伤。这里是谈心歌唱，阳光眷恋的地方。一个人一点微薄力量，一条心圆了遥远梦想。多经历就
the economy of goodness. We will proceed with our keynote presentation. Our speaker is Associate of Fairbank Center for Chinese Studies at Harvard University, Mr. Jeffrey Williams. He is also Independent Director at Pharma Essentia and Senior Executive at UBS. Please put your hand together for our speaker, Mr. Williams.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Now is the time after lunch. I hope that I can make my presentation interesting and then you won't fall asleep. I'm very sorry that I prepared my material in English, so I use Chinese to talk about the beginning, and then I will switch to another channel. Thank you very much. Today I'm going to talk about UBS Optimus Foundation. I have been the independent director for about 9 years. This foundation has a history of 25 years. At the beginning, it was at Zurich, a very traditional government-led foundation. It donated money for children's education and the safety and other issues related to children. And gradually, the funding of the foundation was to help UBS's customers to find investment targets, UBS is strong at asset management and investment. The high net worth customers would like to donate money for charity activities. However, while they were trying to find the project and how to make sure that their donation was used on where they would like to be used, it was difficult. Therefore, UBS established a foundation that the customers, the clients can donate the money to the foundation, and the foundation can hold projects and supervise the projects, and also provides the reports of results afterwards. That's how we started. 9 years ago, when I started being the director, independent director, at that time it was about 60 million US dollars in our donation. And some of the fundings were matched by UBS. For how much the customers or clients donated, the UBS will donate in parallel. And also, if the customers or clients donate 1 million, and all the money will all be used on projects, and the administrative costs will be shouldered by UBS, their fundings will not be shrunk due to the administrative items. 60 million, comparatively speaking, was small to UBS, but our CEO, Reggio Smarty, was the chair of the foundation, and I saw that he used his strengths and make all the employees of the bank to know the importance of the foundation. Our goal was to donate 100 million US dollars per year. However, there was a urgent or emergent assistance program that increased the donation a lot. That was the Ukraine war. And at that time, UBS found 6 humanitarian agencies in Ukraine, and within a short period of time, we got donations of 60 million to help children in Ukraine. And then we set a new goal that within 5 years we would donate 1 billion US dollars. Basically, this year, this is the 25th anniversary. We have completed that goal. We achieved it. Therefore, this foundation, I am the independent director. There is a very delicate or intriguing responsibility. You know that UBS will promote this foundation to our customers or clients. If you come to us, and then we have this philanthropic foundation, so this is something that we can attract customers or keep our customers. So this is the commercial part of it. However, me being the independent director, we need to help the foundation maintain its original goal to help human beings, help children, and help poor families. We can't let it be too commercial. If you are not commercial enough, you won't get enough donation. But if you become too commercial, then it will violate your original definition of why you found this foundation. I myself has been a banker my whole career path. You know, the economy of a goodness, I think this is a wonderful term. You know, commercialization versus great love combined together. I think this is the only way, the only solution if we would like to solve the challenges faced in the world. We need to combine commerce and great love. So this is my beginning of my presentation in Chinese. Now I would like to switch to another channel.
所以这个基本上我刚刚讲到了。
I talked about that the 25th anniversary already donated 1.5 billion. Actually, one out of the 1.5 billion was done in the past 5 years. So it's a quick growth. So we have helped about 7 million people, particularly most of them are children. And in recent years, we started to consider that what is impact charity
to achieve a result. I saw a quote from Winston Churchill, who said, no matter how beautiful your plan is, sometimes you should check the result. And so for philanthropic work, the results are very important. And being a bank and a commercial organization, UBS has gotten to be very good at making sure that the results are being met. This is an overview of the strategy. I mentioned that UBS Optimus Foundation started by taking care of children. And one of the things that happens is we have clients who are interested in more than children, especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Clients become very interested in the environment, global warming, loss of biodiversity, these kinds of issues. And so on the board, we've had a debate on how to reconcile the original mission to take care of children with the desires of some of our donors for other kinds of projects. And so the definition is we put children at the core, which makes sense because children are really the future of humanity. So children are at the core. But if you want to take care of children, you have to take care of their families, starting with their mothers. So maternal health becomes very important. And then the family needs to exist in an environment, which means they need to have opportunities for employment, and the physical environment, the natural environment, needs to be healthy. So gradually we have defined a space that has children at the heart, but also includes family, health and safety, and then the environment that families survive in and live in. Okay, so I hope that's clear. And that has allowed us to take on a broader range of projects. So they have divided the world into 3 categories: education, health, and then, as I said, the climate and the environment, and especially marine and coastal ecosystems, because there are many people in lower income parts of the world that depend on coastal ecosystems, on fishing, and clean water, and those areas are under a great deal of stress at the moment. And then the other thing is emergency response. I mentioned the Ukraine relief effort that we did a few years ago. And so when needed, we are able to approach our client base and ask for quick funding to solve emergency problems. So that's not really part of our children-specific strategy, but it's something that we're able to do when it's needed. We have a number of lenses that we will look at our projects through. We're wanting to find projects that emphasize diversity, that emphasize equity and inclusion across the board, economic equity as well as racial and gender equity. And then finally, we try to achieve impact. We try to collaborate. So this is not UBS optimists going and telling people what to do, but it's creating collaborative structures with local charities and local social enterprises to try to meet local needs. And then, as I said, investing for impact. I'd like to take a stop for a minute and talk about the SDGs. What do you call it? 永续发展目标. The 17 SDGs we're all very familiar with, and I think broadly everyone in this room would agree that the SDGs are a simple way for people to agree on what needs to be done to make the world safe and sustainable for future generations. But here's the problem. The problem is the original deadline to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals is 2030, and it's almost 2025, so we have 5 years. And the funding gap, in other words, how much additional funding is needed beyond what is being applied now to achieve that goal in 5 years, is $2.5 trillion US dollars. 2.5个兆, right? 2.5兆. The total assets of all philanthropy, funds, foundations, endowments in the world is only 1.5 trillion. So even if you spend all of the resources of all of the charities in the world in 1 year, you don't even close the gap. So the only way to achieve these goals is to mobilize commercial financial resources. And indeed, according to our figures, the wealth of all households in the world is 280 trillion. So if we can mobilize household wealth, if we can mobilize corporate wealth, if we can mobilize the funds that are sitting in banks and endowments commercially, then we have a chance of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So our goal is to try to draw more funding into these projects in order to achieve these goals. And we have 3 ways of going about it. The first is to build an ecosystem to bring all of the different collaborating parties in to support these projects. The second is to not only to make grants, but to make direct social investments, to actually help start businesses that will be self-sustaining and be able to provide social services in local communities. And the third is this idea of blended finance, which is to take philanthropic capital and use it as a catalyst to mobilize commercial capital. This is a typical structure. I'll give you an example in a minute, but if you look at the chart, number one, an investor takes the risk to provide funding to a program or a new business, okay? They proceed to deliver their services, social services, environmental services, whatever it is they do, and the results that they achieve are independently verified. This can be an accounting firm, or there are now growing many different specialty firms who specialize in assessing the impact of different philanthropic investments. And then finally, you have an outcome payer, and the outcome payer is not providing the upfront capital, but they only provide the capital if the objectives are achieved. And this is especially helpful for commercial funders, lenders, or for governments, where governments are constantly under pressure to justify why did you give that $10 million to that project. And if the government funder is able to show that they funded against a verified result, it's much easier to justify the investment rather than simply saying, well, I thought it was a good project, so I gave them $10 million. And this really goes to the heart of it. I'm sure many in the room have served on the boards or in management of charities and philanthropies. And at least in my experience, I've found that you're in a board meeting and the leadership shows you their projects. You'll spend a lot of time discussing, is this a good project? Is this a bad project? Does this project fit our strategy? Does it not fit our strategy? But often you never have a chance to go back and say, what were the results of the investment? Okay? So outcome-based funding is very different. Outcome-based funding, the funds do not actually flow to the project unless the outcomes are being achieved and monitored. It's a completely different way of thinking about social investments. And this is really what we're pursuing. And again, you can imagine for a bank like UBS, our clients either became wealthy because their families were wealthy or because they started businesses that were successful. And so these are people who want measurable results. They are not going to be satisfied to just hear us say that we promise we will do a good job and then never give them the answer of what was the result. These are people who demand results. And so we have found ourselves moving towards outcome-based funding because that's what the providers of our resources are demanding. So we've had a number of experiments over the years. In 2015, we did a development impact bond for girls' education in India. That was a very small one. We invested $270,000 and had a $420,000 payback, or a 15% IRR. In health, we did a maternal and newborn health project in India in 2018, made a $2.9 million investment and achieved an $8 million outcome with an 8% IRR. And I'll talk about this one in more detail. A quality education project in 2018, a $3.3 million investment that achieved an $11 million outcome. That means that the outcome payers ended up paying $11 million after the seed capital of $3 million. And so how did this work? So UBS made a $3 million investment to three service providers. Kaivalya, these are social enterprises. So they actually got capital to set up systems. And they did a variety of educational interventions to help primary school students in India. And then the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation and a British, I think it's a British government funder, received the reports on the educational outcomes and then made outcome payments for the success of $9.2 million. And so the total funding that ended up being deployed was something more than $9.2 million plus a return to the initial investment. And when Optimus Foundation makes an investment, if we have a return of funds, we simply take those funds and redeploy them back. So unlike a commercial, the commercial funders receive their funds, and a commercial lender gets their funds and gives it back to their investors. For us, we receive funds back, we put them back into a new project. So in effect, one donation gets recycled multiple times. If I just make a grant, the grant goes out the door and it never comes back. But with this kind of structure, I get repaid. I'm able to reinvest those funds in a new project. In addition, over the last few years, and this is relatively new, we have started with direct investment portfolios. So we now have $16 million invested in a whole range of educational service providers. Now, these are companies. These are for-profit companies. But these are for-profit companies whose activities are aimed at closing some of the sustainable development gaps in local communities. So one example is Credo. UBS Optimus invested $450,000 to help them set up their business model and growth plans. And they, in their catchment area, they've achieved a 38% improvement in literacy and numeracy skills among the primary school students. We've also made $6 million of investments in health companies. And this one, I've actually met the management, came to present at one of our board meetings. This is a company in a community in Africa where hospitals could not get a reliable source of oxygen for performing surgery and things like that. And so this company set up to deliver oxygen to hospitals. And again, it's a for-profit company, but it closed a healthcare gap in that particular community. And they've now reached 112,000 people. And then in climate and in environment, this is relatively newer area for us, but we've made about $1 million of investments in this area. I'm going to talk about an example there in a minute. And then the most recent thing, and this is really very exciting, is setting up what's called the Sustainable Development Outcome Fund. And this is a pool of capital raising $100 million. I'll talk about it more in a minute, but the idea is to provide de-risking to these kinds of social enterprise projects so that more commercial capital can come in behind it. So let me talk about the two examples. The first one is Blue Alliance in the Philippines. And the problem statement speaks for itself. 3 billion people on this planet rely on protein from the ocean, right? People rely on fish. And the jobs to provide that protein employ 500 million people, okay? But as of today, 60% of the world's oceans have been degraded somehow by the elimination of habitat, by global warming, by plastic waste, by chemical pollution. All of these things have damaged that ecosystem. And that means that this livelihood, this protein source that supports 3 billion people is under threat. So what Blue Finance wants to do, Blue Alliance is taking over the management of protected areas and creating value enhancements in those areas by replanting mangrove trees and by sustainable management of the environment. So how do they operate? They have an underwater museum for snorkelers, can go diving and can go look at the underwater life, and that is 50% of their revenues. They have visitor fees for people who want to visit these protected areas, and they gain on carbon credits. They can sell carbon credits from growing additional mangroves. Okay? And this is, I don't even know what a mud crab is, but it says here they're working on a mud crab business. So maybe one day we can all enjoy mud crabs. So their targets, how they get paid or how the investors get paid, is if they achieve the biodiversity targets, if they increase the fish catch for the fishermen, if they increase the new jobs, and if they can plant so many hectare of additional mangrove forests. So this is a $500,000 investment in the form of an impact loan. And the impact loan means the interest payments are tied to the impact that's achieved by this social enterprise. The next thing I would talk about briefly is the SDG Outcomes Fund. The returns are based on impact. The idea is to take early positions in social enterprises in order to promote innovation and improve effectiveness. And this next point is very important, the idea of first loss. So if I want to attract commercial financing, the bank or the investor sends in someone to evaluate the risk, and if you're investing in many of these small-scale social enterprises in difficult environments, the risk will be viewed as being very high. And so the idea of this fund is that, much as with structured finance, and I don't know who here does structured finance, but like structured finance, where you split the risk into different tranches, this fund will take the highest risk, meaning that if there's $1 of loss, that first $1 of loss comes to our fund. That protects the commercial investor who takes the other 80%. And that results in a lower interest rate for the commercial finance part. The SDG is not seeking a high interest rate because we are using philanthropic capital. We're not using commercial capital. So we are willing to take the first loss in order to generate a lower cost of capital for the entire project. For a portfolio investor, for portfolio construction, this is very attractive because the risk profile of an investment in such a project is very, very different, completely uncorrelated to the bond market or equity markets. And so our colleagues in the asset management side of UBS are actively finding ways to incorporate these kinds of financing vehicles into portfolio constructors to change the risk profile. So the word that I'd like everybody to take away is the idea of catalytic capital. The old way of doing philanthropic grants is I find a good project and I give the project some money, and then the project either succeeds or fails. The idea of catalytic capital is I provide funding to form the base for a larger amount of funding from commercial and other sources to make things happen that otherwise wouldn't happen, and to achieve much higher scale than I can do alone with a simple grant. Okay? And the catalytic capital can do a number of different things in different situations, all of which UBS Optimus has been experimenting with. You can fund the design and startup of a new project that other funders then come in once the design is done to make it go farther. You can help strengthen the viability of an existing project. For example, you can fund a consultant or a technical assistance plan to raise the level of performance of an existing project. Or we can do what I just referred to, is you can come in and take first loss and create a blended finance vehicle that can lower the cost of capital and increase the scale of the capital available to the project. And so this role of being the provider of catalytic capital is great because it's purposeful. You make your investment because you want to achieve something very specific. And by so doing, you make it easier and more likely to achieve the impact that you set out to. You can bridge a gap. Frequently, a very good idea can't get funded because no one's willing to step up and take the first position. And so you can bridge that gap to allow a good idea to get to the next level of scale. And most importantly, a lot of our investments, like the Blue Alliance that I showed you, on the surface, they look a lot like a private equity investment, right? You come in, you put dollars in, and then in a period of time, you have an exit, somebody else takes over your position, you make a profit. But the difference is private equity normally is impatient capital. Private equity has a timeline. They have to return capital to investors in 5 years or in 10 years. Our investments are patient. We don't have to close out in 3 years or 5 years. We can stay with a project indefinitely as long as we're achieving the impact. So that's what I want to say. I think I'm very proud to be connected to UBS Optimus. I think that this marriage of a strong financial institution with a strong philanthropic arm is rather unique in the market, and I think it's something that you would hope more commercial enterprises would adopt. And I'll go back to what I said in the beginning, that it would not be what it is today if it were not for very strong support from the very top of the UBS organization to make this a real part of UBS business. It's not just a ESG, nice to have. It's not just there for public relations. It's there to be an integral part of the offering that UBS has to its clients. And that's why we've been able to grow our impact and reach so many people in need. So I'll stop there and look forward to discussing further. Thank you.
感恩韦杰夫先生如何引领投资协
Thank you very much, Ms. Jeffrey Wallens, leading us to make our generations to realize our goals. Now we have 30 minutes of break. We have prepared some refreshments outside. The next session will begin in 12:40. Please, when you hear the change of the music, come back to this venue. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you.
其实就是。我有点忘记哦，对，然后它这边就没了。
OK，
所以这样是什么？这样是在
你这样子的话就会变两个，可是就是基本上一个结束，你就要关掉另外一个。
所以红灯是指他在讲，是不是？
红灯就是你正在讲。
对对对。
Red，
那我应该按掉吗？
下课了。
哎，两个都可以 red 哎。
为什么两个都
Paco
是
可以
红色
两个都可以讲哎。
对，等一下哦，你们先试试看。现在是英文 channel。
Test, test. This is a test. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. 那 James talk.
Testing, testing.
No,
No.
no.
Testing, testing. So I
所以
have
应
to
该是
press.
in Chinese.
Okay, testing, testing.
Yeah.
Okay, so 应该是这个嘛
English, yeah.
English 是 A or B?
B,
B. B and then press this.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Hello?
自己有听见吗？
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Great, thanks.
多少汗水砌成一道墙，
多少苦心聚成一个家。
这里是温暖明亮、阳光眷恋的地方。
一个人一点微薄力量，
一条心圆了遥远梦想，多经历就能点亮多难的愿望，让我们像一家人一样
来分享感动，化解迷惘，用最温柔的目光，
看彼此成长，张开臂膀，
打开门窗，
让爱照在心上。也许你我故事不一样，
却都在这被爱被疗伤。
这里是谈心歌唱，阳光眷恋的地方。
一个人一点微薄力量，
一条心圆了遥
请各位贵宾尽速入。
Dear guests, please be seated. We'll start in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the forum. Now next talk will be hosted by the Associate Professor of Zhengzhi University, Zhou Lifang. Let's welcome Professor Zhou and the other participants.
Mr. Yan, Deputy CEO He, Dharma Masters, and our professors and scholars from all over the world, and our dear guests, good afternoon. I'm very honored that every year I have the opportunity to participate in Tzu Chi Forum. Now, this year, our topic is about how we can bring justice to bridge the wealth gap. And it's important how we can spread the kind thoughts, the principles of Tzu Chi. Let's congratulate our CEO Yan for winning the award. Now this talk is about how we can bridge the wealth gap. And I feel very honored that I can talk with three well-known scholars. Let me introduce them. First, the Associate Professor of Suzhou University, Associate Professor Zheng Zhongxing. And then Wu Yande, he's very special. He wants to care about the underprivileged people in society, so he has established Duyu of Flavor. The third is Li Wenjie, is professor from Zhenji University. When we talk about how to spread the proportion of income, first there's economic, then there's society, and then there's environment. In the development of economy, we must also care about how we care about the environment. We must also care about the justice in society. There are three concepts. Everybody has a fair chance. Everybody can participate in the economy development. And everybody can enjoy the fruit of the growth of the economy. So now we're going to talk about the gap of wealth. Now if we look at statistics, the family income of people in Taiwan, the last time they shared such statistics was 30 years ago. Now we divide the incomes into 5 categories. Back in the year 1991, the gap in the income was 16 times. But the newest statistics shows this year, the highest income and the lowest income has a difference of 66 times. So it's necessary for us to look into the gap into the wealth in Taiwan and what it means for us and how we can take actions. Now our first participant, our first talker, is Mr. Zheng Zhongxing. He's going to talk about how the tax has an impact on the tax. Now our property value has increased over time. So everybody's income, everybody's wealth has increased. So let's welcome our first talker, Mr. Zhen Zhongxing, to talk about tax on the wealth gap. Our host and our participants, good afternoon. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share with you this thesis which I just completed. I'm going to talk about the tax system and how about the progressive tax system, which is an index to look at the wealth gap. Now, if you have studied finance or economics, you will know how we can redistribute wealth and resources. And this is how the government wants to decrease the wealth gap. And it will have an impact on the redistribution of wealth. Now, when we talk about rent tax, there are three categories. There's first of all, there's the proportional tax. No matter your income, the amount of tax is the same. And then there's the progressive tax, where the people with higher income are taxed more than people with lower income. There's the principle that talks about the fairness in taxation. The tax system must be progressive in order to be fair. If today my income is 100,000, and then with some compared to somebody with 10 times the income, so my income is 90,000. However, if people with higher income are taxed 20% of their income, then compared to me who's taxed 10%, then you can see there's a big difference. So for us to value a tax system and whether it's fair or not, it's important that we look at the whole picture. Every year, as we file our tax, we look at our income, individual income. If a family has an income of 5 million or more, then they're taxed 40%. If a family has an income of 2 million NT dollars, then their tax is 20%. Then also you can invest in stocks, and you have capital gains. You also have to pay taxes. So these are the 4 categories of taxation. Now this taxation system has appeared in Taiwan's history. Now if you sell and trade stocks, you don't have to pay taxes anymore. Now, after 2016, there's also the income and property tax that's being combined into one tax. Now, real estate is a very special market. It's rare that within 20 years, there's a little difference. So a lot of money has been poured into the market, into the real estate market. As we try to value the difference in the wealth gap, we can feel that. So it's very difficult for the middle class to afford to buy a house right now. And there has been some reforms in the real estate system. And there has been more adaptation to the system. Starting the year 2014, anybody with owning real estate right now we have the old system, the combination of old and new systems. So we have to look into whether the new system is applied or the old system. If you look at the land increment tax, we look at the value that it's being proclaimed. And you will notice that the proclaimed value is a lot lower than the actual trade value. In calculation, we calculate the actual value of the house, which can be lower than the market price. So our tax can be very low. Before I wrote this article, I researched a lot, and I look at the opinions of other scholars, and they think the old system is very low. In Taiwan, there's no research into the low taxation system. So my article looks into this problem. In this article, I want to look at whether the new taxation system and the old taxation system, how different they are. And I will look at whether it has the effect of redistribution of property. Now I'm going to tell you how I conducted my research. I look at the Department of Finance statistics, and then look at the statistics in the year 2016 to 2021. So I can look at the data bank. I can look at their real estate and their land increment tax and their individual income tax without knowing their identities. So I use the new system to review the old system. With this comparison, I could answer the questions. In the data sample, there's the effective sample, which means this person, if he earns 100 NT, he paid tax which is more than 100 NT. Which means he pays a tax which is higher than his income, which is very special trade. Now there's usually he has very unknown reason where he has to sell the property and lose money. And I look at 140,000 cases in my research. Now this is data of the national data. And the trend is very steady. In the first few years, we see less samples. Because usually in the early years, the trade cases are taxed more than the recent years. By the year 2021, we can find 60,000 cases. Now we look into why the old system considers the taxes low. There are two formulas to look at this. First, you use the real price to do the calculation. But in the older years, there's no real prices. So we use the second formula. We use the housing price to times the proportion. The proportion is not very high. So there's a big gap. between the calculations. The old system combines the individual income tax into the calculation. So this is how I did the calculation. The new system is a lot easier. It used the real trade prices and deduct some expenses, such as the expenses you pay to the real estate agents, and then you times the test tax. Now, if you hold your real estate for less than a year before you sell it, then this is the amount of tax you have to pay. If you hold the real estate for more than 10 years before you sell it, then you are taxed the lowest tax rate. So this is the formula. This is how I did the calculation. So you see how in the new system, the old system, the denominator is the same. So the real difference is only one difference. And in the progressive taxation calculation, I use residual income progressive. I can find out whether the tax is progressive or regressive. If it's less than 1, then it's progressive. Then during the calculation, I also use analysis. So this is the calculation. And this is the value. Now let's look at the conclusion and the result. The average tax is about 40%. In the later years, it decreased to 30%. Compared to the old system, in the old system, you notice the tax rate is about 3. It's a lot lower than 10%. So what's more important is our old system. In the old system, about 50% of the people have paid no tax. Then we look at the 95% of this line. They paid about 20% tax. So in the old system, about 75% of people have paid tax at a tax rate of 5% or less, which is very low. So we can see the result. Now this is the old system, this is the new system. So we can find out that the old system and the new system are both regressive tax system. And the new system has a higher regressive tax rate than the new old system. So the old system has a low tax rate, and about 70% of the samples have paid a tax of lower 5% or lower. Both the old and new system, it doesn't have the effect of redistribution of wealth. Why is the new system more regressive than the old system? Because there's more reasons for people to trade at a lower tax rate. Now you see the lowest tax rate is 15%. For people with little capital gain, it might not be a lot of difference. But for people with a lot of capital gain, it's a big difference. So people with higher income, they actually pay lower taxes. This is my report. Thank you.
We are so thankful that Professor Zhongxin told us about the theory about the income tax, talking about the regressive and aggressive tax. As we know that the progressive tax means that the burden is increasing, and on the contrary side, if the tax is lower, that means regressive. No matter the income is high or low, then we have get the equal. The fairness means the proportional. So we talk about the system, the new system and the old system in Taiwan. These two systems looks like get the results are very close to. And even in the new system, something regressive. Now, one of our honor guests, he is also the specialist about this finance problem. So maybe later we can invite him to talk something about that. Now, the second one, our honor guest that we invite is Mr. Wu Yende, who is the nonprofit organization Do You a Flavor, the co-founder and the spokesperson. Also, he care about many problems, issues about the homeless people. So today, Mr. Wu would love to talk about the subjectivity of the poor people. Now let's welcome Mr. Wu Yende. Thank you for introducing me here. Dear CEO and all the honored guests, I'm Wu Yende from the nonprofit organization Do You a Flavor. So I'm going to talk about the fairness and the equality about our society. My organization, the goal of this one is to reduce the poverty gap and discuss focus on the homeless people. You know, we have this group called homeless people. That is one part of a city. Some people may fall into the trouble. Maybe they have to find a place, a shelter. So let us discuss about the institutes, about the policies in this society. In my MPO, the so-called Poverty Alliance, I have a very simple idea about that. Because we live on this planet, so great amount of population here, everyone wants to find a place that is safe and sufficient. So think about this planet. For example, there are 40 people there. When all the people here, they have enough food, they have happy life. If there is no other poor people here, no one has to wander on the street, then it will be a positive cause for others. You know, the law in Taiwan, the most concerned about this is the poverty law. Inside this law, I think many scholars, specialists here, actually should be supported by the well finance. So do you want to have a good social welfare? Then you have to construct the organization and the institutions here in this society, the positive law for the people. So it is not avoidable that we have to talk about the tax. But any police, any party, any political party, if it wants to increase the tax, then actually it committed suicide. Nobody will do this to increase the tax. So let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, I passed by the Taipei station. Homeless people sit aside me, and she just threw his mailbox to the ground. And my friend, a journalist who was interviewing me, get surprised about this. And he answered, "Why is that?" I said, maybe there is something made her upset. Maybe there is something that reminds her to feel bad. I know, because I know some of the people, they do not have the lucky life, fortune life, so something may occur suddenly to his mind. And you know, when the mailbox thrown into underground, maybe we'll gather some mouse there. What I want to emphasize is that one people or all the people are not isolated in this country, in this world. No one is an island. The connection between people is very close. For example, if the tax or the income increased, or the population for some kind of group increased, what's the relationships with us? Not only the misfortune is connected with me, the happiness for others is also related to people mutually. For example, once upon a time, another time, I passed by the Taipei station again, and I saw a group of people celebrating for somebody's birthday, having a cake. Each time when I tell this story to my students, they have this warm smile. So The only question is many people misunderstand the society relationship. For example, it's just like when I was a little boy, I thought that the relationship between me and the trees are only that I inhale of oxygen and emit the carbon dioxide. And the trees, they create the oxygen. Actually, the tree has many close relationships with people. Even the trees have the influence among us, not to mention the human beings. For my experience, many homeless people, when they have the misfortune or luck experience, they don't feel happy. So what they have done, what they have to speak, will not be positive force in the world. So maybe he or she will hurt others. That is because they got hurt at first. You know, all the people's actions, behaviors will make the reaction to others, will have the impacts on others. Allow me to use the terms of Buddhists. The world is constructed by the human existence, the languages, and the minds. This is the total amount of all the behaviors created by the people lived here. So the problem is that we act or not. That is, we have discovered the fact or not. Actually, the Taipei train station has no relationship with me. I just walk past by. But I understand for these stories, I can understand more. The misfortune and the fortune of others will create some influence on me, on others. So everything happened around us is not just happened randomly. Actually, it's a systematic result. So we have to under the concept of interbeing. Not only bad luck or good luck randomly happened. We have to understand the systematic result. So we talk about the approach, about the memes. It's very easy. That is to rediscover the connection of the people. We need to discover, we need to understand. We need to realize, to feel, and we can understand the voices, be heard, be understood. Then we will have the connections. Yeah, as my experience, all the homeless people gathered, they have the very close relationship. They have the countless ties with each other. Nobody will tell you how to treat others. They just know it. Because there is a connection, the connection will cause other influences between us. This is the so-called connection of goodness. So when others is suffered from some pains or feel happy about something, actually have the influences on us. So in this society, we have to find the means to use all the resources, to the intelligence, the knowledges, to help others, to spread the love to people, and then the happiness will create more happiness. Let me introduce this alliance. You know about the situation, just like an iceberg. The nominal amount of poor people accounts for about 2.4%, talking about the underprivileged people. According to the statistics of the government, actually the poor people, the real poor people, account for 8 to 12%. At least 5% of the population stayed in the poor situation in their lives, and also not to be estimated as the poor people. They do not live very well. They fall into the poverty. They don't have any choice. They don't have any rights to choose. They become the people who conduct the street selling, or maybe become some liar or criminal. Of course, sometimes the society will create a stigma. For example, some people who conduct the street selling or some juvenile, and that will make a circle about stigma and misunderstood. They don't have honor. They don't have the rights to choose. They only have to do is choose the choice that cannot be understood. Some people may ask, why do you want to sell on the streets for some small things? So sometimes the stigmatization will happen because this is an exclusive society happen. Then at last, the last time when we found this one who sells something on the street, we will find maybe he or she is a liar, just want to cheat your money. This is so-called the stigmatization. So it makes a circle. The stigma cannot be removed in our heart. Why? The voices of these people cannot be heard by others because they don't have the ability, they don't have the room to participate in public affairs. It's hard for them to express themselves. When they have difficulties, they don't know how to use the language to let us understand totally. Maybe not so logical. Maybe some words we cannot understand because they don't have the ability to do this. Even inside these groups, it's hard for them to accept others. So for these recent years, we do your Faber NPO, we will understand more voices from the homeless people or underprivileged. We want to create a platform for them to express, to illustrate their problems. You can see that we have about 20 organizations participate us. For example, the Equality Association or the Eden Social Welfare Foundation or even the Study Fatigue Association, the Laborers Front. Then we just want to let them understand that they can express their ideas, their voices, not only be stigmatized by people. When they have the jobs temporarily, they will not be seen by others as the liar or homeless people. They are not lazy. Each time people see them just because they were sleeping, actually only on that time. Others, they have to work, they have to find some place to rest, to have meal. When these voices can be understood by others, then we can feel, we can understand the behavior. We see many situations here. At first, maybe we don't understand, but later, if we understand the voices, we can listen to them, we will understand the inside problems. For example, the mother of many children, or the teenagers in trouble, or the impoverished family. Sometimes they just do not want to live like this style. They also want to have a very normal life. not the scenery we have seen. We find some people in trouble. Actually, we have to help them to understand them, not to hurt them, not to give them the stigma. Then we have the opportunity to create a society that we can alleviate from the poverty. So this expression is very powerful. Let me introduce this movement created by a priest in France. This is a group that want to deliver the opinions for the poor people. When I visit this place this year, I asked them some questions. I asked them, why do you want to pay so many efforts to help homeless people or poor people to say something, instead of repress them to express? Why do you want to suffer these pains? And the priest said, of course, when we repress them to express their opinions, maybe we're more clear, but this is not our goal. Once upon a time, we have a discussion about this problem. They talk about that the social worker, they force them to do something that they do not want to do. For example, to resettle their children to other places. Maybe people based on the goodwill, but the arrangement is not very suitable for them. So they protest to the members of the association. After this discussion, people understand at the first time, when we, based on the goodwill, to force them to do something, to arrange their lives, actually, it will never be positive for them. Maybe they will get hurt by these arrangements. So then, when we understand this problem, we will change our styles. So we know sometimes they just remember this for a long, long time. Let me make some examples for this discussion. This is the so-called EDF, the Electric Power Company of France. The step here, they visit a slum. They saw why people, the face of the people is dark. Why? Because they burn the coal, they burn something because of no electricity. So they initiated something. The EDF had a policy at that time. They observed, because they don't have the money to afford electricity, then they will break their electricity, afford the power constantly, because they understand the suffering because of cold, of sickness during the procedure. We can collaborate with the poor people. For example, on the Paris train station, there are so many homeless people. They have many luggages, maybe chaos. So they want to set up some luggage room for these homeless people. They discuss with them, understand their needs. Okay, let's look back at Taipei station. Some homeless people, when they stayed at the station, they help each other. When somebody is not here, others will take care of his or her luggages. So the action about alleviation of poverty, we will find the real methods, the good methods for these people. they can construct a new society. They can make the society understand the feeling, either negative or positive, that the society understand what have achieved and what mistakes they have done. I think the economy of goodness is very important. Whether we can construct this goodness decided by the people who understand it or not. Thank you. This is my sharing.
We'd like to thank Yente for his sharing. I feel touched because he mentioned how to feel the homeless' heart and how to connect with them. He mentioned others' pain are related to me. Others' happinesses are also linked to me. We should join all their feelings and feel them. And people who are like homeless, they will be in poverty without choices. Because of their poverty, they lose choices. And that's why he had to make a choice that nobody understands. And because nobody understands him, he will be in a situation, in a stigma, and expelled by the society. And the poor people, they lose their choices again in a loop. So in the speech, we have to encourage everybody to be more tolerant. And also, we have to overturn the poverty. And we have to create a safety net for everyone. We'd like to thank Yente. Next, we would like to invite the third speaker, Associate Professor from Department of Economics, National Zhengzhi University. He would like to share with us about analyze fairness, justice, and distribution efficiency. Let's welcome him. Thank you, Ms. Zhou, for your introduction. I feel two speakers' achievements are great. And also, I strongly agree with them. If I have to conclude in one sentence about my sharings, I have to share about Sun Tzu. I like to define subsidies or tax. We definitely have to look into it. If we do not look into it, I have to remind our deputy chief would speak in this forum. I have to step into this tax usage. If I overuse the tax, what will happen? You can see as in this picture. You see, here's a very strong athlete, but there are lots of obstacles, even a heavy lead on the leg. This is how I explained how we put down the obstacles with subsidies. How do we obstacle our own societies and obstruct our choices and options? With this same thing from economic point of view, traditionally, we talk about efficiency allocation. We can see from this picture before, we have to base on the taxes and a lot of subsidies actually cause a lot of obstacles and cause harms. So fairness and justice, if we explain from that picture, if we can make it equal for both of the athletes on two paths. We will be able to select who is suitable for the development job and who is suitable for using the resources to achieve the fairness. So in order to achieve fairness, we will have to do something about it. Then let's take a look at the charts. It's a sum of all 1,000 words. This big pie represents the whole resources of production in the society. We would like to allocate all the resources for the well-capacitated manufacturers. And then we talk about ESG capacities as well, and the values. When we talk about values and capacities, how do we arrange them? We would definitely get a high aggregate output, while vice versa. In that picture we saw before, the best athlete, we gave them the worst path. And how do we make it equal? We have to definitely make it fair. So I like to combine what Sun Zhongzang, our founder father, said, including Taiwan, China, and all the countries in the world. We see a lot of governments, politicians, they base on any kind of items to strongly input taxes. And actually, the countries will misallocate their resources and cause very low aggregate outputs. And I have started editing in 2023 about this book, how the resources have been misallocated. In Taiwan, where we are, our subsidies and our other powers, renewable energies, are not as capable as we thought. So we have to go into the chapters and sum up for everybody. Based on the developing ideas, if we scavengers all the resources and misallocate them, let's see. Here we talk about Edward's spot. This is the 2 0 points. These 2 0 points represent two people. They represent the resources. There's two axes. First axis is for the total labor, and the usage is fixed. It has been divided for two manufacturers. And this vertical axis is the capital inputs. If we use based on the tax and distort the market price, for example, we abstracted this tax. The tau is not equal to 0. So we see this in this red circle. It exists, but it will affect the market price. The manufacturer X and manufacturer Y, they're facing different market prices. And under this situation, the market price will be allocated to be under. If I put it tau equals to 0, if tau equals to the market price, society price, it should be the wage divided by salary. If tau equals to 0 or tau is not equal to 0, tau equals to 0, we can see Y manufacturer, it will be an enhanced efficiency. And we can see the Y 0 point is farther away. That means it could be allocated more production capabilities and reach more outputs. Let's take a look at how about we were changing the Y production. Does it hurt X manufacturers? No, because we go along the X basic principal production amount. So when we move this point, we can get a result of Y, can improve the output. And the only difference is we remove the tax from the middle, and we can achieve fairness and justice in our economy. So if I go along this Ajwas River, I can see a justice and fairness contract line. You see Y, X, and Y line will represent a different society line. I choose the right person to do the right job, which can achieve the most outputs. And we talk about the fair outputs. And we will be able to share our resources for other weak groups. If the deviation from the contract 0 point represents the inefficiency of subsidies. And here's a picture I show everyone. The improper allocation can be the output of the national GDP. You see, the possibility of this line will stick out. If I go along this edge to produce, it means I can achieve the maximum outputs. If there's a distortion in this line, that means I misallocate all those resources. I have consumed all the resources, but it's hard to achieve the same result. If I reduce the distortion, if I adjust the tax accordingly, I can definitely enhance the usage and the outputs and maximize aggregate output. In the book, we talk about different chapters according to different natural resources as policy. We combine them. So we calculate it, just like on the book. In China, in Yunnan, Guizhou, they definitely overdeveloped in the water and electricity supply. But the production is about 80% waste of electricity because it's not connected to the grid. Because on the east side, they require whole lot of electricity. But just because of that, they were unable to boost their renewable energy growth. So the China departments, they definitely subsidize the local electricity, water-powered electricity too much. And actually, they waste a whole lot of production powers. That's improper subsidies, actually unbalanced the resources, which is a shame. And also the book states on the wind-powered, there are 4 different areas based on this wind-powered energy. We label them 1 to 4 levels. We can find out the most unreliable for wind-powered capacity area has the most resources, and that caused the lower production of the electricity outputs. just from this point of view, it has been all the manufacturers using under leveled production. So you can ask me for some paperwork that stating what I mentioned before. The last point I would like to share about the carbon emission. We know that we have a deadline for that. How do we utilize our resources to reach this goal? How do we reduce carbon emission? We have the same concept. How we totally use our resources, how we change our energy from 80% high cost, high contamination, and low valued manufacturers, turn it to the high and efficient natural powered resources. So we have to aim at the resources to live at three lows and one high manufacturers. So we have to exchange them the other way around. And this is our direction in the future. So we use 1 degree of electricity, we will repay back to the society. Any $1 distribution should be contributed to our GDP as well. So the high cost manufacturers, they should be shifted to the low carbon emission manufacturing. Under this development, definitely they will release a lot of new jobs. And definitely will be a much better change in the job field. So how we simulate, but we have a concept simulation. So the job opportunities will definitely be a positive change when we reallocate the resources, and definitely there will be an increase in job opportunities. And you will be curious that the international resources and energies have been fluctuating. So we have summed up that from all the walks, all the different industries, manufacturers, the energies, water, gas, electricity, cost about under 3%, which is very, very low. It's hard for us to imagine, especially the gas has gone up 3 times or 4 times. But over the past decade, the cost for electricity still only cost under a 3% cost. Do you know what kind of situation that is? That's because our energy usage is very distorted. So how do we go over this threshold? When we stand from this point of view, how we shifted from the good capability manufacturers to well utilize the resources. And this is what we talk about: reduce carbon emission and overturn the renewable energy into our future, and how to enhance our aggregate outputs. That's all I have to share with you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Wenjie Professor. He has been telling us that green energy is very important, especially he mentioned the 3 win-win situation: low carbon, full allocated resources, and we have to eliminate all the difficulties, and we will give the good capacity manufacturers. our time will last until 4 o'clock. We'd like to invite two important sharers, speakers. One of them is Professor Wen Jie. He is also a co-author and also from Tzu Chi Foundation and Jianguo CEO. He has received an award of top CEOs and the goodwill of poverty dislocation and reallocation of resources, how we eliminate poverty, and what we have put in. Let's invite Lu Gongda, our deputy. Good afternoon, everyone. I was very pleased to be here, and she's really one of my teachers, because we have been 3 generations here. And the 3 guest speakers, they have talked about sustainability, and we have to devote our resources to make it fair. So it's a very technical issue, and also an art technology, how we put taxation and make sure that everybody understands it's a logical and reasonable taxation. And in his report, he mentioned that the capital gain tax has been very low. Our government has been trying very hard from the actual record of the house selling prices. I have to emphasize that one reason is very important, that everybody thinks our taxation is very low. Well, maybe we need to raise it a little bit, but maybe it's right and also wrong. But just like Professor Wen Jie mentioned, our resources have been distorted, misallocated. So we have to see it from the basic roots, and we have to see the resources are different. And we see from our forum, from the Nobel winners, the top 3 American richest person owns 49% of the wealth. So as I remember from 2011, there are lots of young people surrounded Wall Street for 2 months. They were surrounding Wall Street for one reason, because only 1% people owning 99% of the wealth. When we look back in our country, it's also similar. So before we want to tax the wealthy people, we have to understand what's the difference between the normal people like us and the wealthy people, the top 1%. How do we do the changes? We need to adjust something from the capital gain. Just like our personal tax and also salaries, GDPs, how do we adjust the tax? And our policies have been from version 1.0 upgraded to version 2.0. It's a long way to go. But when we talk about the rental tax, when we adjust it accordingly, our resources will definitely be equal. And just like our Professor Wen Jie mentioned, we can definitely shift to the more capable manufacturers. And then this is my sharing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we are like to invite our Ren CEO. Thank you all, Professor Zhou, for giving me an opportunity to be here. Last year, also, she hosted a forum, and I heard and I feel the same for the past 2 years. The scholars and the professionals, they all speak of truth, but why don't our government adapt the truth? So what are they thinking? Of course, the 3 guest speakers' sharings are very touching. I also have similar experience. In the past, I worked in Singapore. That time, when the factory expanding, I told my boss, you gotta give us a subsidy. Just like our companies establishing in America, they also get subsidies. Labor costs, water, electricity, and so on. So when I argue with them, Singapore politicians told me one thing, woke me up. He says, the Taiwan government's subsidies are too much, and that's so strong, makes you very advanced. It's even lower than China. So that is the cause of the differences. So that time I was a little shocked. So I totally agree that how we can create a good system, design a good taxation system in a justice and fair way to reallocate our resources. So we talk about Professor Wu, and we talk about this a lot, and I'm very touched about the homeless people. And the situations are very sad, and I was very touched because I'm a very logical person. When I see the government in California, they have invested a lot of money to help the homeless, but I saw more and more homeless. It's almost like 6 times higher homeless people nowadays. So California's homeless people takes about 30% of all American homeless. Why do they get more and more homeless people if they devoted so much money? And that's because of poverty. We can say that definitely the misallocation of resources is a very big problem. When the poverty gap becomes a problem, we'll definitely see an increase of homeless. And our government's policy is not able to change in time. Over the past 3 decades, the poverty gap has risen like 4 times. That's really sad and created so many problems in our society. And that's why we need to focus on these problems. So I wonder how we can see from the scholar's point of view, from the professional's point of view, to review our system. And the background of our society will definitely has a gap between the reality and the future idea reality. But also, like to be humble and thank those people ahead of us, how we can understand and definitely interact in a goodwill way to restore the basic expectation of all people's lives. So we will try it together, do it together. Thank you very much. And I know the economic department leader, and we were friends before. I think he would definitely adapt everybody's thoughts through the scholars' points of view. We'll definitely establish a good system to implement it. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our CEO for his expectations, and we expect that the forum today will definitely do a good influence and make sure more people in our society, including our governments, departments, to see the scholars, professionals' point of view, and definitely cooperate and work hand in hand together to make our society a much better place. I'd like to thank Li Wenjie and professors. And if you have any questions, and later on, we will have a recess. And we would like to wish our forum going well for the next few days. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, speakers. Please stand in the middle so we can take pictures.
感恩老师们对分配正义、降低贫富差距做出的建言。论坛的内容非常丰富，不过我们不能累坏自己的身体，所以接下来我们还有20分钟的休息时间，在场外有简单的下午茶，欢迎各位取用。在休息过后呢，论坛将分为2个场地，在国艺厅，也就是这边进行专题研讨3，跨域协力翻转贫穷。在2楼的感恩厅将进行另外一个专题研讨，创新慈善影响力投资。这个场次将用英语进行，所以如果您需要翻译的话，请在国艺厅的后方取得翻译机。2个场地都将于4点20分开始，请在听到音乐声改变时，进入到您选择的会场。